I'm joined today by Elle Edwards. So Elle, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Elle is the founder of the Itchy Soul Playground and Youier Media, which has been set up to help people have fun again, to embrace who they are and live the incredible life that they were born to live. Elle, you've described yourself as the irrepressible silver lining spotter with a compulsion to say the stuff that most people only think in their heads. So Elle, I'm sure my listeners will be fascinated to hear your story and why you set up the Itchy Soul Playground and Youier Media business to support others through the community to live better lives.
I'm sure they will be.
I certainly am. So
yeah, the whole thing behind Youier. So Youier Media is my publishing company, and then the Youier is the main site that houses the playground. But my whole journey to where we are today is actually part of my story. And so my motivation, the reason why I'm so passionate about doing what I do now is because I remember still very, very clearly how miserable and grumpy I was in my mid-20s. I always wanted to just fall in love, get married, have children. And by my mid-20s, I had that. I had an amazing husband. We've been married nearly 21 years. I had everything I ever wanted, and I was miserable. Inside, I'm very fortunate that none of my children, who are now teenagers, nor my husband, really remember me as this grumpy, frustrated. But I still remember this feeling of anger deep inside of me and getting so pent up with rage sometimes. I did a great job of playing pretend. They don't remember, but so frustrated. And then I had this is really random. I happened upon a Bible weight loss course. I'm a bit of a curvy girl, I always have been. And through a series of coincidences, God gave me this picture of just how loved I am. And I came to the conclusion, do you know what? If God loves me as I am, then I can stop trying to play pretend. And I can stop, because the reason I was so miserable is I was trying to fit into this picture of what this perfect, ideal mum should be. You know, I put so much pressure on myself, and I'm not really very good at being normal. I'm quite scatty, I forget things. I have great systems in place now, but I was really frustrated. And so little by little, God did a bit of a number on me. And it's been a journey. Like I said, my youngest is now 14, so it must have been about 12 years ago this started. But little by little, I've been embracing who I am. And so now, my real joy and delight is to encourage other people to do that. And it is a journey, but not every single, if I'd have gone to the doctors at that point, they probably would have given me a tablet and told me I was depressed. Now, I'm not suggesting that every single person who struggles with depression and anxiety, I'm not saying this for everybody. I know there are people who do need medical intervention. But I think as well, there are a lot of people out there walking around with labels, either ones that they've given themselves thanks to Google, or ones they've had from the doctor, that if they actually just said, do you know what, I'm going to strip back all of this stuff. I'm going to just, all those pressures we put on ourselves, the societal expectations, and just be me, like, well, who am I? I think we would actually eradicate an awful lot of the mental health problems that we do have.
What did your family think of you at that stage? Because did they see that the same person that you saw, that grumpy person that was not trying to find yourself, I guess? So.
Funnily enough, I asked I'm the eldest of 6 children, and my sister down, I remember when I was pregnant with my eldest, flying into a rage, and I don't remember why, but it was triggered for some reason by her arriving with her wedding photos. And I remember distinctly my mum saying, look, calm down, Eleanor, because Elle is short for Eleanor.
I know, yes.
Yeah, she's the only one who calls me Eleanor, and the people in the bank probably do
or
too.
When you've done something wrong.
Oh yes, that happens too, yeah. Eleanor.
Anthony, when I've done something wrong, Tony.
Yes, but she said to me, Eleanor, you have to calm down, otherwise you're going to damage the baby. Now I remember that really clearly, but I asked her, my sister afterwards, years later, do you remember that? She said, no, not really. So I don't know. I think they recognized that I was very thin skinned, shall we say, that I would get quite temperamental. And I got to be transparent, even now, I don't particularly like change. So if somebody just suddenly tells me, well, this is what we're going to do, I'm like, well, hold on a minute. Like, have you asked me so it's because my mum said that a few weeks ago. She said, yeah, you are quite chilled out, but I still wouldn't just tell you what to do. I'd still engage you in conversation instead. I said, yeah, that's reasonable. So I think they remember bits of it, but I don't remember. They certainly wouldn't have been brave enough to call me out on it if they do. Because honestly, there was times when I was really not great.
Yeah, but I think sometimes is that we don't recognize certain things about ourselves where others do,
Mm.
and the other way around. As you mentioned, sometimes we are great at hiding things
Yeah,
and the way we really feel, which is not good for us as individuals. It's just that perception. Sometimes we can work both ways.
definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think we're sort of almost like taught that we have to show up this certain way. And like, I love social media for the people I've met, and I'm a complete geek. I do believe I was born for the internet. Like, you know, it's amazing. But at the same time, one of my bugbears of social media is even when, you know, people, we go like authenticity is like a buzzword, you know, particularly in business. Oh, we're going to be authentic. But have you ever considered that even when people are being authentic, they're still filtering how much mess they show you, you know? And so then we think, oh my word, they're being real, and look, their mess is nowhere near as messy as my mess. And then we spiral. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and there's this quote, I should write it, Marcus Buckingham. There we go. Thank you. So if I say, thank you, God. There's a quote that he says is we should stop comparing our backstage areas to everybody else's front of house. And I think that's so, I love that quote because it reminds me, you know, we only you know how much mess there is in your head. Like only I know how much mess there is in my head. And so if we stop comparing our mess to what we see of everybody else, I think we'd be a lot healthier and happier as well.
I think one of the worst things we can do is and social media doesn't help this, is we see the perfect lives or those snippets of people's perfect lives on social media, and the reality is not like that. But we are trying to, in our own sort of minds, the dangers we are seeing. Why is now our life like that? And it makes you unhappy. So.
Oh, definitely. And ideally, like we know logically, you know, and we've all got those certain friends who will post all of the best stuff on Facebook. We know that logically. In fact, one of my siblings, I mean, not so much during COVID because, you know, but like during normal life, something hasn't happened unless she's put it on Facebook and tagged me in it. It drives me crazy. But so I think we all know that logically, but I also think it's sometimes, you know, particularly if you're having a rough day or a rough moment in an otherwise fine day, it's easy to forget. And one of the things that I find quite challenging, I think, well, not challenging, I'm thankful for me and you that we didn't grow up with social media, but parenting teenagers through it, I mean, I don't envy them at all. It's a real challenge for them. Absolutely, you know.
Well, I've got a granddaughter, so it's and she's constantly on a mobile phone, etc. So it's I think it takes away a lot of the communication skills that we all need in certainly adult life at the very least. So it's pluses and minuses, I think, with social media. So
definitely, but I think probably some of the skills, like us as the oldies, you know, they probably have different skills and they just use them. And that's my hope. Ever the optimist, you know, silver lining spotter. My hope is that yes, they are doing life. They communicate differently, but let's hope that, you know, because the world is always changing and adjusting, isn't it? So that's my hope.
I like to believe the same as well. This is just another evolution in terms of us as human beings, and this is obviously we're in a technology age, and therefore as a result of that, obviously people are going to use that in different means. And at this moment in time, social media is the way that we communicate.
Yeah, I do think this as well. I don't know if you've noticed this with the people you speak to, but I get this sense that there is a bit of a swing back to what they've called old-fashioned values. Like, I don't remember, I'm too young to remember like I remember the corner shop, and but I don't remember like greengrocers very clearly. And I think we did have a greengrocers on the street that I lived on as a kid, but I only really remember supermarkets. But I do see a bit of a swing back to, you know, conversation, like getting to know people, kindness and all that sort of thing. You know, but what my biggest bugbear is when people would go and walking down the street and they're doing this on their phones. You know, that I want to walk into them just to make them look up, but I don't, because that wouldn't be kind.
Or trip them up.
If you're feeling mean, I don't know. But it does remind me. Do you remember in the 80s, everybody? Because I do remember that. Like we had the big headphones and we had the Walkmans. It's a bit like that almost now. Everybody's plugged in all the time, albeit it was Walkmans then, and now of course it's.
I'm sure my age. I do remember the corner shop. I do remember the little grocers down the road. So
I do vaguely.
I remember the groceries being delivered on a bicycle with a basket.
Oh wow!
That's probably my oldest memory as a child. So.
Oh wow!
So tell me, so you went through this yourself in terms of, you know, being grumpy, trying to discover yourself, etc. So how have you transited from that to where obviously starting your business?
Oh, that's a good question. It's been a journey. Let's just say that. Round about the same time, so a bit of context. Around in fact, I remember when it was 2010. Our church set up a charity called Give a Brick, and at the time, and there is a reason for this, I'll get there in a sec, we needed to raise £100,000 to build a community centre at the back of the church. And everyone was like, oh, £100,000, that's loads. And I was like, well, it is, but all we need is 100,000 people to give us £1, hence Give a Brick.
Yeah.
So then we thought, well, how are we going to find 100,000 people? And in 2010, at the start of 2010, I fell into this world of blogging and Twitter and personal development. And so that really, I didn't know it at the time, but that was actually the start of my entrepreneurial journey. And because I found all these people were doing stuff that they loved in their pajamas, and they were setting their own schedules. And I'm a qualified teacher, and at the time I was doing supply teaching to fit in with my husband's shifts. And we'd made that decision as parents that one of us would be home. But it was rough. Like, I remember when my eldest was little, we'd meet in a car park halfway between his police station and where I'd been teaching, and hand the baby over. Yeah, we would, because he'd been going off to do a night shift, you know. So I've always been quite entrepreneurial. Like, I remember I'm the one who, when I was doing teaching practice, they'd get me selling the raffle ticket. But it wasn't really until I fell into this world and discovered that, oh, the internet's used for this sort of stuff. And it was part of a journey. And so I went round in circles, I think in about 2011, early 2012, of thing finding. Oh, what's my thing? Because all these people, you know, we're told we need a niche, we need a thing. And I spent ages navel gazing, going around in circles. But little did I know at the same time, learning loads of tech skills. So like, complete geek. I built the website for Give a Brick. I was learning Twitter and all of this, blogging, all this sort of stuff. I reached a point at some point in 2012 where I said, you know what? I am so done with trying to find my thing. I'm just going to be me and use all these crazy tech skills to help other people. And so that's what I did. And so I launched my VA business, and it was all going really well. It was lovely, building itself, etc. But something was niggling at me. And I would maintain it was God. Like, I think, you know, something, but you haven't got to use the name God if you don't want to. It's ultimately, right, these things that keep coming back to us, they are clues to who it is that we actually are.
I believe that too. So
yeah, so so we pay attention to those. And a few times I've gone, like I thought, for example, that I'm getting niggled to write fiction. So eventually I went off and wrote like 5-6 fiction novels. But then it's still, it kept coming back. And so I grew as a person, exploring who I am, and at the same time grew into this role of, oh, there's other people that need this too. And it just kept coming back as a niggle. And the Itchy Soul Playground, as it is today, I can't remember the year, but it's had different names over the years. I've tried.
Well, I like the present ones.
Well, very much.
The present one is, well, I was going to say itchy, but it's catchy, isn't it? So
thank you.
It's catchy, so you will remember that name. So.
But it's actually a clean version of what I wanted to call the G spot.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
But it is, because it all started with this idea that this niggle that we have inside of us, that I think is, like we talked about, being God niggling at us. Yeah. I think that's partly God niggling at us to do relationship, and partly God niggling at us, well, look, I've got this stuff that you can play with. And so I wanted to call it the G spot, but of course, you know, I couldn't have a website, theGspot.com, really. And so I remember having a conversation and explaining it, and someone went, oh, what about the Itchy Soul? I'm like, oh, I like that. And so that name came up years ago, and actually one of my fiction books is called The Itchy Soul. And so it's fascinating to me how these different names, like I've got a podcast called Heaven and Hell, that name was given to me.
I like that one too. So,
but that was given to me on Twitter in about 2011. It's fascinating how all these names and these strands, they all weave together, and they're finally like coming.
Yeah, but all of a sudden they just clicked, don't they? They clicked.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right. So you have that. Whatever that is, but you have that sort of gut feeling that it's right.
Yeah, and so for me it's been a journey. I'll be quite transparent, and if it had been successful and it's different iterations, then it wouldn't have been the business it is today, because I'm not the person now that I was then. And so I'm a big believer, like I know people listening to this, some of them are business folks. Yeah. I'm somebody who does not really believe in overnight success stories. I know we love them, but I'm one of these people actually that sees life as a journey, and it all feeds into it. I had a guy on the phone about a month ago who told me that you've been doing this for 8 years, you might as well go and give up and get a job. I'm like, well, thanks very much for that piece of information. Bye. Because he doesn't know me and doesn't know my journey. And, you know, okay, I respect your opinion. Thank you for the feedback. But no, I personally believe that those things that are niggling at us, there's a time and a purpose for these things. And 2021, you can check back in with me in December, Tony, but 2021 is the year of the Itchy Soul Playground and Youier. I see, because ultimately I think everybody needs to be themselves. And I see this being really important for folks. And so I can't remember what the question was originally, but the Youier piece is definitely a journey.
In life, again, this is my experience to share as well. So you can pretend to be somebody else for short bursts of time, and you might get away with it, but the real you will come through. And for most of us, the real you is somebody worth being, and other people are going to love the real you. So why are you trying to hide that, when with all things in life is some people are going to resonate with you and be drawn to you for being you, and other people then are not going to like you, or you repel them. But that's life.
Definitely.
You're far better off attracting the people that are attracted to you, the real you, than the you that you may be trying to pretend to keep them happy or be something that you think that they want you to be.
Definitely. And we have this idea that we have to, like, everybody has to like us, yeah. But my two analogies for this is beige magnolia, that's the word, magnolia paint, and vanilla ice cream.
Okay.
Now, if you ask anybody what their favorite flavor of ice cream is, they might say, oh yeah, the vanilla with the is it Madagascar little bits of them. But nobody says vanilla. Nobody loves and is passionate about plain old cheapy vanilla, you know. And it's the same with us as well, like what you just said, you know. I don't want to be vanilla. Oh, that's really boring. Oh, dear me. You know, we want to be people who are fully alive and fully human and doing the stuff that lights us up. And like you say, the right people will, for that would be magical. There are people who don't like me. I've had people who've actually told me, sorry, Elle, I gotta be honest, you intimidate me a little bit. You're a little bit too much. I'm like, that's fine. I said, if you actually get to know me, I'm a really good listener. Don't, you know, I know I'm noisy. I know I'm quite loud, but actually there is more to me than just this, you know. But and I'm quite open about that. And sometimes people are like, oh, okay, you know. But other times they're like, no, I just can't cope with too much, which is fine. I can live with that.
That's walks of life. It's as simple as that. So I think sometimes we also worry too much about what other people think. As you know, that's part of obviously something you mentioned in your community. So tell me, in terms of the obviously the business you run to support others, how does that actually work? Because I can see online that you've got quite a community there. So how have you attracted those people in the first place? And then once obviously they're in your community, what sort of steps or process or learnings do you provide for them?
So I'll be quite transparent. We are still quite teeny tiny and small. So at the moment we are. It's wonderful to me. I am really blessed and honoured. Okay, the ladies. It's not just for ladies. There's men as well. It's open to men as well. It's just that I tend to attract ladies at the moment, anyway. And so the ladies who are in there at the moment, many of them have been around through all those different iterations. And they're so delightful to me, because when we tweak and adjust and grow, they're growing with me, and it's just an honour. But moving forward, so one of the things like this, you talk about how do we find people? Getting to talk to folks like you is how I did back at the start of May. I said to God, okay, I'd like to do this with the playground. I'd like to actually do this work and you know, grow it in the way that you've said we're going to. What does that look like? And he said, go on podcasts. He said, relaunch your podcast, you know, the Heaven and Hell podcast. We're also doing, and I do it live on Facebook first thing in the morning and then it goes out to all the places. He also said, we're going to do a community love story. So I've got stories from other people, which they then share to their platforms. So right now, at the time of recording, a lot of the how do people find me piece is about putting out, so yeah, putting stuff out there. But actually the precursor piece to this is to find out who you are, because I maintain there's all these questionnaires, you know, there's this gift and there's the strength finders, and in Christian circles we have these gifts, and there's things on Facebook which Harry Potter character, we all want to know who we are, but for me, I maintain that it starts with knowing whose you are. And so that's the purpose for the podcast, is sharing love stories. Okay, I didn't know this until literally about 6 months ago, but God tells me stories, and then I've been doing it for years. Something would happen in day-to-day life, and I'd share that story, and there'd be like a takeaway or a lesson to learn, or here's the thing you need to know. About 6 months ago, God said, you know, that's been me this whole time. I'm like, really? He went, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. So now that I intentionally recognize that, something will happen. Like the other day, I tried to sign up for LinkedIn again. It was all in German. Like, I don't speak German. It was, and I couldn't work out why. And it kept happening. Okay, God, is there a story here? He said, well, funny, you should ask. Yes, there is. I went, okay, what's the story? He went, boom, 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 boom. And I then told that story the next day in the podcast. And so they're all like little love stories of things that are happening. Because my real heart and passion is, even if somebody never joins the Itchy Soul Playground, for me, it's all about giving people that fresh new awareness of God's love. And this is a bigger conversation for another time, and it probably isn't. But I fully except to say that I maintain that over the years, we've done a really bad job of representing God, is all I'm going to say on that one. And so I'm here, I share these little love stories through day-to-day happenings, and people enjoy them, and some of them, I mean, the people that don't like it, that's fine. They haven't got to stay. And then for some of them who they get it, oh yeah, I know. Lady in the playground, she gave me this quote. She said, okay, I know whose I am. Now I'm ready to find out who I am. Because unless you know and can be confident and content in that relationship with God, but what we do in the playground, we say, okay, God, I've got lots of teaching and training in there about like how to figure out who you are, who does God say you are, and all that sort of stuff. But you can't do that process with God unless you actually feel like you are loved and you can trust him. You know, there'd be no good me saying to somebody who doesn't believe in God, go and ask God who he says you should be. Oh, hang on, there's a knock at the door. I'm going to pause for a second.
All right, it's okay, it's fine.
Because you can like.
Yeah, no, I can edit this only, so.
Yeah, but I'm hoping my husband will answer the door. I have a dog, you can tell. Done. Sorry, it's a really loud door as well. Sorry about that. I don't remember what I was saying now. Yeah, the quote. So this lady, the lady in the playground, she said, and now I know whose I am, I can figure out who I am. And so that's what all the training is for. But I can't say to somebody who doesn't believe in God, oh, go and ask God who you should be, because they'd be like, well, what are you on about? I don't even believe he exists. It's nonsense, isn't it? And so for the ideal people and the people that really resonate with it, the love stories are like the introductory piece. And for some people, that might be the only way I help them. And if all I do is introduce them to a new picture of God's love, I've made my day. Like, I'm absolutely content with that. But then for the people who are ready to go deeper, that's when we do community.
Right.
And so there's training in there. There's video trainings. There's loads of different bits and pieces, which I won't.
But give me an example of what they are, though.
Okay, so there's a course which God had me create last year called Youier Dreams. And he's got a great sense of humor. I had lockdown hair. I'd cut my own hair. I know I was looking at it a few weeks ago. Can I re-record this, God? Because look at my hair. He's like, no, don't be so ridiculous. So I didn't. So Youier Dreams is for those people who have got this thing that's niggling at them. They're that itchy, oh, God's calling me to do stuff. How do I make that happen? And so that's what Youier Dreams is for. It alternates between, I think there's 12 lessons in there. Lessons is a boring word. Games, 12 games in there. And we alternate between, okay, here's a game where you explore what that niggle is. It's effectively goal setting. Let's be quite transparent. It's goal setting, and then it alternates between a lesson on goal setting, and we start with a big picture, and then a lesson on mental health stuff, building your resilience, so that while you're working on this stuff, you don't like sort of fall off the edge of the planet with like, you know. And so that's what Youier Dreams is. We've also got Youier Games, which we're actually going into the Bible and going, okay, there's loads of stuff about gifts and stuff in the Bible. Who does God say I am in the Bible? And then exploring that. But the community piece for me is the real magic, because it's that safe space where they can just, okay, if you're having a rough day, or you're not sure, or maybe you stepped up and you spoke out and were more confident in something and people gave you a hard time for that, you can bring that to the community, knowing that you can just be yourself. There will be occasions, I mean, at the moment we're small, so I don't think we've ever really disagreed, but I imagine as we grow, given what Christians are like, not everybody's theology is the same. My theology is mine's fairly liberal, I gotta be honest. And I know that not everyone's ever always going to agree with me, but if they can cope with agreeing to disagree, and because for me, it's about love and Jesus. The rest of it, I'm like, I'm not going to argue with you about baptism. And so but you can do that in that safe space, and we then have monthly coaching calls as well. We get together on Zoom, ask questions, do community. It would be like, if I could have everybody come around to my house and sort of hang out here all the time, it's the closest I can do to that within the guise of the internet.
Yeah, is there any plans of, obviously, currently you do it over the internet through Zoom, etc. So is there plans to have a physical place for you to have this community as such?
Well, that's so funny you should ask that question. There's two pieces to that. So that fiction book, The Itchy Soul, that I wrote, is set in a happiness retreat place. And one of the dreams God has given me, it's in France. My husband doesn't like to fly. We like France. And so one of the far off dreams is to have this place in France that could host writing retreats and all that sort of thing. But also then one of my friends in the playground told me that God told her that at Pentecost 2024, I think she said, we're going to have some sort of event as well. But I don't know any details for either of those things. All I'm just going to say is that the answer is definitely not no.
I think it's a question of watch this space.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I love people. I love bringing people together and hosting and just having a great big time. So I think it would be marvellous. If we could persuade everybody to come to Wales, see, that would be brilliant.
I think the people who haven't been to Wales would love it. Especially your part of Wales, Swansea. So.
Yeah, well, although you wouldn't want to be in Swansea last night, because if you saw the news.
I know, I did see it, yes. I saw that. Well, we won't go into it, but I did see it, yes.
Yes,
it didn't give the best impression, did it? So
it did not.
So in terms of the media side of your business, so tell me more about that, because we haven't touched on that yet, really. So.
Yeah, Youier Media then. So when I was scratching the itch of publishing fiction, I'm like I said to you, a complete geek. And it's wonderful the time that we live in, like the gatekeepers are gone. Anybody can set up their own publishing company. Yeah. And so I set up a publishing company called Youier Media for the purposes of initially publishing just my books. And then at some point last year, God niggled me and said, you could be, because it was part of my longer term dream, was to have Youier Media publishing other people's books. I thought that was about 4 or 5 years in the future sometime, but no. Last year, we started publishing books. There's a lady in the playground, and to cut a long story short, she has now a series of books. It's called And Us. So she's written, it's a compilation of, I think it's 12 or 13 people have done chapters. Anxiety in Us, Sadness in Us, Fear in Us, no, Anger in Us, sorry, is the 3 that have been published. And then Fear in Us is the one that comes out in June or July. Yes, because she's really into jinjitsu, which I don't know anything about. Is it jinjitsu? I don't know if that's the correct word, actually, because I get muddled up. One of the ones, there's one that's a little bit like kickboxing.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, so it's not that one. It is jinjitsu. That's fine then.
I know jiu-jitsu in terms of what it is. I don't know jinjitsu.
Jinjitsu is it's a tool it's a helping tool for like mental health stuff. And apparently the different colours of the covers of the books, they mirror them. So yeah, so to cut a long story short, yeah, Youier Media currently publishes books by people within the playground. And my longer term dream is to hand that all off to a team of people, quite candidly. Because I love the idea of it being there. I also would love the idea of not being in charge of all of it. So that is eventually will be a separate thing. But it's great. I love it. It's wonderful because we get to publish books from people who otherwise, wouldn't necessarily get published, because traditional publishers don't want to publish compilations, So it's good fun.
Any bestsellers in there yet?
No. Not at the time of recording.
I was speaking to a lady about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she had a publishing house. So she was telling me about, I won't do it today, but she was telling me about all the tricks they do to get to #1 on Amazon and those types of things.
Oh, like little tiny micro niches and such like. Yeah.
So it's, I didn't realize that at the time, but it's not quite as difficult perhaps as what we first think.
Yes, that is true. Absolutely. There's some of those niches that you can only have to sell like 3 copies of a book, and you're like, you can slip your bestseller on there. So yeah. But what I will say on that though, because this is actually applicable to your business owners, is I fully maintain that pretty much every business should have a book at least on Amazon. Yeah. Think of Amazon. It's a great big search engine. Think of your book as your calling card. So actually it doesn't really matter if you're not a bestseller. Having that book there, well, you can go on podcasts, say, I'm the author of, such and such and such, it gives you that instant credibility because, well, you're an author. Because I mean, it does take work to put books together. It's not as hard as people actually think it is. I'm just going to say, it doesn't have to be, but it does give credibility. And so I would encourage, you know, your audience to think about, well, where could a book fit within what I'm doing, and what would that look like? And last tip on that, don't think of it as the one book to rule them all. Okay, this is not Tolkien, you know, with his one ring to rule them all. I got that quote completely wrong, but never mind. We'll just gloss over that. But you think of this as your first book, because you never know.
Isn't it? It's a start. It's one book is seen as a chapter. It's just one of them.
Definitely,
one of many, hopefully.
definitely.
And
Definitely.
so are you then in a position where you can help people that may be listening and want to write a book? Is this something that you could offer them, that type of service?
Potentially, yes. So I tend to do more. I have got a one-on-one coaching service, which people can do separately as not part of the playground. It is also sold as an add-on to the playground. So I've done that in the past. So, but my real sweet spot is about helping people actually get their bums in the chairs and get the work done. So, and then I don't like editing books. So I'm not the person. What we do, I guess my real magic for anybody who's listening would be helping you get that draft written. And then I've got contacts. Let's reach out to these people to actually get your book edited. And then when you're done with that, yes, I can publish a book. Like I've got people that help compile it into an actual book, but it's the getting it done piece that I get most excited about.
I think that's the hardest, and that's the daunting thing for many people, is that just getting started is a challenge in itself. And then completing that, so you say the first draft at the very least, because then it's fine tuning, isn't it? When you come to editing. So
definitely. Yeah, once you get, I mean, it's funny because I always say this, getting the first draft done is the hardest thing you'll get done. Yeah. But you think once you're done, it's not the most time consuming. Once you get it done, actually getting the book published, there's always little extra bits you never see coming. But they're not as hard once you've actually got something written, because there's nothing worse, you know, I'm sure, than looking at a blank screen or, you know, oh, where am I going to start? It feels like this great big, looming thing. It doesn't have to be like that at all.
Yeah. Going back to the playgrounds, I'm sure you've helped quite a few people, even though your group is small, but you've had people with you for a number of years, you said. So without sort of infringing on anybody's sort of privacy, are you able to share some of the things that people have had sort of either problems or issues with being part of that playground? They've helped come to terms or solve those particular issues.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the big things that happened this year during COVID, one of the ladies in the playground lost her dad to COVID. And then at the same time, or around the same sort of time, was having problems in her marriage as well. And I remember really clearly, she'd come, oh, bless her, you know, and the thing is, I'm really empathetic as well. And you can just feel, you know, and so it's been a privilege to be with her through that. And so, because there aren't any magic solutions, sometimes it's just coming alongside people. And she's somebody who, a bit like me, is a little bit ADHD. And so at the same time as that, she was wanting to do stuff in her business. And so helping her navigate, how do I cope with all of these emotions at the same, and then there's all of this, and oh my goodness, then there's this. That's been a real privilege. One of our other real success stories, and I'm going to name names because she's actually sharing the story of it in my podcast tomorrow. Okay. There's a lady called, I know it doesn't, well, okay, tomorrow at the time of recording, I know by the time this goes out, it'll be an old story, but she won't mind. Her name's Amanda Krill, and she bought a building, and 18 months ago, she just went past this building and felt like God was saying, you're going to own that building. And she lives in America, and has a passion to own and renovate this glorious old building. I mean, old for America. I don't think it's old for England or Wales, but you know, for America, it's a really old building. Well, she's bought it, and she wants to create this space where local women to her can come and create their own businesses. And that really excites me, because I think, wow, as a result of doing this and supporting her and being there for her, she's realizing her dreams. And look at this, she's going to, oh, it gives me goosebumps. She's going to help these people realize their dreams. And the ripple from that is just phenomenal to me. It blows my mind.
I don't think we always understand the impact that we have on other people's lives. And as you mentioned, that rippling effect is that can ripple many, many times to different people. So you, by obviously that lady being part of your group and your playground, is going to do similar and perhaps even bigger or better things or in America.
Definitely. And I'm not naive enough to think that I'm the only reason she did that. But it's all because we put
Part
pressure.
of that,
definitely. Yeah. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves when we think we have to be like the one,
yeah.
but actually instead it's all of these pieces all
Yeah.
weaving together. And also the thing that excites me is the generational impact. So imagine like we've got like parents who do a better job embracing who they are.
Yeah.
They then get more confident allowing their children to be who they are made. Like I've got 3 teenagers they are now. They're all very different. I have never parented them in the same way. It would be a disaster. And I know instinctively we know this, but sometimes it can be difficult. And so actually by helping people embrace Youier and be who they were made to be, it like gives them a permission slip and helps them, the people around them, have permission to be who they were made to be. So it is really exciting to me, those ripples. And you're right, we're sometimes, probably a lot of the time, we won't see the actual direct impact. But yeah, like for example, there's that famous, what's his face, Billy Graham, who's the famous preacher that everyone knows about. His Sunday school teacher, the person who like helped him get to know Jesus, nobody knows his name. I mean, I'm sure his family know his name, but like as a result of him doing his thing day to day, he made Billy Graham. And Billy Graham, I mean, I don't agree with all of Billy Graham's theology, but that's an aside. You got to hand it to the man. He definitely made an impact, And so we will never always see the impact that we make. It's lovely when we do get to see it. Don't get me wrong. We like that, but I don't believe we should be looking for okay, how is this going to make a difference? I like to, I get these nudges, I act on these nudges, and I just trust God to figure out the how and see it all slot together.
Brilliant. So so people, in terms of joining your playground in particular, so can anybody join your playground? Have they got to have, certain problems or issues, or is it just somebody just wanting to join the community and get as much as they can out of that community without having any particular problems? Having said that, I think we've all got some form of troubles that we need.
We're all a bit bonkers, really. Yeah. Yeah. But no, it's for anybody who what I describe as wanting to travel the narrow path. It's this idea. This piece we're told, do well in school, get a job, maybe get married. This dun 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 dun. When you want to go away from the cultural norms and the thing that we're told we should do, that's the piece that I describe as the narrow path. And so and that can get quite lonely and a little bit like, on a ledge. And so it's for anybody who wants to travel that narrow path and to have community. Now, yes, we talk about God. So I imagine that if somebody is really strongly opposed to hearing the word Jesus, they're not going to like it. I'll be quite transparent. It's aimed at Jesus folk, because the reason for that is I think there's too many miserable Christians in the world, and I want to help Jesus folk be more lovely examples of Jesus. Quite honestly, that's my why behind all of this. So the more that we can show up and be lovely and actually be delightful and who God made us to be and be that better representation. But that said, if somebody came and said, you know what, Elle, I'm not really sure about the Jesus stuff, but I'm really would like to explore it, I haven't got a problem with that. We have had people in the past who had different religious beliefs, shall we say, and they were with us for a good 2-3 years. It got to the point where they said, do you know what, I'm finding it too difficult now to switch my language around. And so they made that decision to leave, which is fine. But no, I mean, I just want to encourage anybody to be who God made them to be. And who am I to say, no to that?
Well, to some extent, it's for them to judge themselves.
Absolutely,
Join the playground, join the group, and see where it takes you. So on that point, if people do want to know more about you and obviously your playground, etc., where is the best place to find you?
The playground is at youier.com. That's my website, or youier.com/join. But I would probably be more likely to encourage people to check out some of the videos. I've got lots and lots of podcast episodes now. I'm Ms. Elle Edwards on Facebook and on Instagram, and now on LinkedIn too. And, oh yes, and on YouTube. I haven't got a fancy channel for YouTube though. I haven't got like a channel name because I've only got 10 subscribers. If there's 90 people out there enjoying it who want to subscribe, because once you get 100, you can have a fancy URL. So the stuff that I share goes out to all the different places. And in fact, even on your Alexa, if you've got an Alexa enabled device, you can get the podcast now as a smart briefing and you can wake up to me. Yeah,
very good. Coming to the end now, but there's a question I like to ask all of my guests, and it wouldn't be my podcast asking this question because it's more around obviously the things I'm involved with, which is wealth, etc. But the question I want to ask you is, what does wealth mean to you? Because it means different things to different people.
I'm sure it does, yeah. Whenever I think about wealth, I have to acknowledge that I come to all of this from a really privileged position. You know, I haven't worked a full-time job since the children were born. We made a conscious choice as a family that we can afford to get by on my husband's wage. Okay. So, which has allowed me to play and experiment. I obviously do earn money and whatever. So for me, wealth is more about having the freedom to explore who I am. But I have to recognize I say that from a place of, what's the word I was looking for? I used the word already, it's gone out of my head now. Privilege, that was the word I was looking for. From a place of privilege, because it's easy for me to say, oh, I'm not actually that motivated by money. I'm not, quite honestly. For me, wealth is about getting up and being here for the children. Teenagers now, you know, knowing that if one of them has a problem in school, they haven't got to worry about, oh, can mum or dad come and pick me up? You know, it's that freedom piece for me is what wealth means. But I know that I don't have to worry. I know that we're secure enough as a family that we can afford to put bread on the table. So I think wealth is one of those funny words, and it's a great question. It's one of those funny words. It's a bit like success. It gets measured in so many different ways. Quite honestly, I would like, personally, one of my goals for this year is to earn enough money that I allow my husband to have some time to explore what it is that he's passionate about. Okay, that's real wealth to me, is to be able to, real wealth is to be able to have the means to explore what you're excited about, those things that light you up. To me, that really is what wealth is about.
All right. Well, that's a perfect answer.
Well, thank you. Is it the perfect answer because it's the answer that I gave, or is that the perfect answer?
It's perfect because it's your answer.
Well, thank you.
As I said to you, everybody's different, and it's so what it means to you is really what matters.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this now, is that a lot of people will resonate with what you said.
Oh, that's encouraging.
I'm sure it's going to be similar to what other people feel as well.
Yeah, because it's funny, as business owners, we think that we're meant to have these £1 million businesses and all the rest of it. But actually, to run a huge or multi-million pound, I have got no interest in that, because to be quite transparent, I wouldn't want the management headaches that come with it. You know, I'm like, oh no, I don't mind having a small team, but but you have to know yourself, and that's why it comes back to being Youier again. Everybody's different, so it's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. I will put all the show notes, or your links in the show notes. So if people want to make contact with you, then they have those links there for you. So Elle, it's been fascinating to hear your story, and I love hearing about the playgrounds and also your media business. I'm sure my listeners will as well. So thank you for coming on the show. I'd like to wish you all the best in everything you do, and hopefully in 2024 you may get to have that retreat.
Yeah, I'll make sure I keep you posted on that one, because but no, in all seriousness, thank you for having me. Honestly, it's been really fun. I've had a whale of a time.
All right, you take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.